Settle in, guys. If you want to grab pen and paper, take some notes, that's up to you. I'm happy to drop some knowledge on you tonight. Hopefully, it helps you through this whole crazy recruiting process. So, again, we'll get started here probably in 30 seconds or so. Just get want to make sure everyone's got time to get settled again. Grab pen and paper. Happy to talk this through with you guys. So, tonight, we're really going to dive into the top 10 questions that you should be asking college coaches in your recruitment process. And the goal behind these questions is really one, to better equip you to talk to college coaches. If you're the student athletes, probably the most nerve wracking thing, a part of the recruiting process, is actually talking to a college coach on the phone. And now, with everything with COVID, so much of those phone conversations have actually shifted to FaceTime conversations or Zoom conversations, which tends to put a lot more pressure on student athletes. So, we want to make sure you guys are prepared with what to say to coaches, what to ask, so that you're more comfortable, but ultimately you're finding the right fit school and you're asking really good questions that are going to help you maximize your scholarship offers. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in, guys. Just so you guys know who I am, why am I here talking to you guys? My name is April Hall. I'm a vice president of recruiting for NCSA, Next College Student Athletes. A lot of you probably already know who we are, which is great. We'll definitely talk about who we are here in a second. But I did coach college for 10 years. I was a D1 head coach. That's where I ended my career at Western Illinois University for several years. Was the assistant coach at Ohio State. I'm a huge Ohio State fan, was born and raised, hence my Ohio State flag and everything Ohio State in this office. And also coached D2, D3, and played NAIA. So I've been in every realm, guys. The only realm I haven't been in is the junior college level. I have recruited several kids from that level. So my goal is obviously to help you guys find that right fit school, no matter where the right fit is. It could be D2, could be D1, could be NAIA. Who knows? So want to make sure you're equipped to figure that out in this process. And that's really what NCSA, who we are as a company, what we do. We help student athletes find opportunities to compete in college and find the right fit schools. So we've been around, guys, for over 20 years. We're the largest and longest running recruiting company that's out there. We've got the NCAA that backs us, which is great. Everything we do is in compliance with them. And I'll tell you what, you want firsthand information about what the heck's going on right now with the NCAA and sports, you definitely want to come to us. They give us the inside scoop, which has been good and bad. Let me tell you guys. So last year alone, we helped over 26,000 student athletes and helped kids get over $16,000 per year per student. So times that by four, it's a healthy chunk of change in your guys' pockets just by using your sports to get into better schools, get better options, and get better money, of course. So I kind of look at NCSA, guys, as a matchmaking service, to put it simply. So we're here to help student athletes find the right fit schools, and we're here to help college coaches find the right fit student athletes. So all of you on this webinar tonight will actually get an NCSA profile built for you if you don't already have one. And we'll make sure that we help you guys know how to utilize that profile and use it to benefit your recruiting. Now, these are the sports that NCSA works with. Want to get these in front of you guys. So you can see the men's side on the left, the women's side on the right. We work with over 33 sports, which is awesome. We're here to help you guys. If your sport is not listed on this webinar can still help you, just FYI. NCSA might not be able to have a profile built for you, but this webinar is still greatly going to help you, again, if you don't see your sport listed here. So what we want to do tonight is really dissect questions that you should be asking college coaches. Why do we want you asking these questions and what to look for in a college coach's response? Then we'll talk about the recruiting timeline and next steps, and we'll take as much time as we can, guys, to answer some questions at the end. So we'll we'll dive right in to what these questions are. I'm sure you're all just dying to know. So the number one question, I put this first because this was probably my favorite question that a student athlete would ask me in the college recruiting process. What's the culture of your program? Where do you see your program going in 5 years? So the culture of the program, to me, I love this as a coach because I knew exactly what my culture was. My culture was, we're going to get better every day and we're going to be good at our job. So if our job is to be a good family member, because we don't have practice, we don't have school, maybe it's a Sunday, it's our off day, then we're going to be the best family member we can be. If our job for the day is to win a game, then we're going to do everything we can to win that game. And if we lose, we're going to walk away saying, you know what? We did the best we possibly could. We got a little bit better today. We're gonna come in and work hard tomorrow. All right. So if a college coach can't answer this question, to me, that's the biggest red flag. That tells me that they don't know who they are. That also tells me that they just don't have a good vision for their team. So, that's something that you guys have to think about as student athletes and as parents. How important is it that a college coach has a vision for their program, has a vision for their student athletes? Because ultimately, we want you guys to compete in college. We want you guys to get scholarships, to be able to get a great education for a much lower price. That's really, really important. But we also want to make sure that your student athletes are taken care of. So we want to make sure that your student athletes are in a place where a coach knows who they are, knows what they want. And then where do you see your program going in 5 years? To me, this is easy. Why you should ask this question? You want to make sure the coach is going to be there. So some coaches are always thinking about the ladder. How can I climb the ladder? How can I break that ceiling that I've set for myself? What can I do? What's the next best thing? You want to make sure that your kids or you as student athletes are going to a school where the college coach is planning on staying there, building the program, and sustaining it. So there's nothing worse than trying to go through the transfer process if your coach leaves. So these are two questions that I would highly recommend you guys are asking college coaches. And again, if it can't be a cut and dry answer, if it can't be black and white, if you find a coach kind of talking in circles, you got to think about those things, guys. Is that the right fit for you? Is that the right coach for you? Might be the right school, but is that a coach you're going to thrive under? So this question I like as well. So can you talk to me about your best season as a coach? Why why should you ask this question? It tells you who the coach is. That's why. So I love talking to you guys about the psychology behind these questions. You want to figure out what's important to that coach. So if that coach is only talking about stats and numbers, then you guys know what you're getting into when you go there as a student athlete. That's a coach that's going to be very much stats and numbers oriented. If it's a coach that's talking more about personal development, the team development, those are good signs that that coach cares about you holistically. So cares about the team as a whole, and that the wins and losses might be important, but taking care of the team as a whole and developing student athletes is more important to that coach. So again, there's no really right or wrong answer. There's only a right or wrong answer for you. So if you're numbers driven, numbers oriented, stats oriented, then maybe you love that coach that talks about, oh man, this when I was at Ohio State, we went to the Sweet 16. We only lost 8 matches. Because that was, to me, that was my season. That was a fun season when I was at Ohio State. But my best season as a college coach was my last year coaching, and it was a wreck. We'll talk more about that later. But my student athletes developed, they came out of their shells. They had probably more fun than they've ever had. They played out of their minds, absolutely out of their minds. And they all bought into helping each other and being good teammates. So if that's more up your alley, then that's the answer you should be looking for from college coaches. But if you're really just there for the wins and losses, then for sure find that coach that talks about the wins and losses as their best season. So again, these questions, guys, are really just to help you figure out who that coach is, so you can figure out if you'd fit well into their program. Plus, on the flip side, guys, as a college coach, if you come to me with some of these questions, I'm thinking you've thought out your recruiting process a ton, you care about it more than other student athletes, and you're taking it seriously, which to me, that makes me want to offer you more than somebody else. Because I know we've got a lot of smart student athletes and intellectual student athletes in the room tonight. This is what's gonna help set you guys apart from other student athletes, having good questions like these. All right, so moving on. So these three questions, I kind of lumped them together because they're all kind of academic based and they're all important. So I know all of you take your education very seriously, which is awesome. You should, because this is not a 4-year decision, guys. This is a 40-year decision. And if you're making this decision based off just 4 years, that could be problematic for your future. You don't want to have to go back to school and end up spending more money because you didn't go to school for a major you wanted. So asking the coach, how do academic labs affect practice and playing time? That's important. Sometimes you might have to miss practice for certain majors. Are there any majors that don't work with your program? Guys, Division I, there's so much glitz and glam that's surrounding Division I. It's, the mecca of college athletics. But I'll tell you what, the more glitz and glam there is, the more those college coaches can have control over what you're doing. So especially if you're going Division I on a full ride, there are some college coaches and some levels that you're not going to be a nursing major. You're not going to be an engineer major. You're not going to be a medical major because those labs interfere with practice time. So you have to understand, is that the coach, is that the program that's going to work around it? Or is that the coach and that's a program that I'm going to have to change my major? Or I can go there and I can have that major, but I'm not going to play. You gotta figure out what's important to you. And then what's important to that coach as well. Because again, how they answer is going to greatly determine or help you determine what's the most important to you when you're making your college decision. And then lastly, is academic assistance readily available for student athletes in and out of season? This is such an important question. And you want to make sure, again, that coach has a plan for it. So I had a very structured plan. Freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors. Freshmen had more study tables than sophomores, juniors, and seniors, because that was probably the hardest transition, going from being in high school to your freshman year in college. Now, every school is different. Ohio State, if we needed a tutor, that tutor could be on the plane with us that weekend. No cost to the student athletes. In Western Illinois, if we needed a tutor, we had to wait until we got back for the weekend. So, again, every school is a little bit different. And for you guys, again, because you're wanting to go to better schools and wanting to get into schools that make the most sense for you academically and then athletically, you got to make sure that you're asking these questions. Again, that also shows initiative to the college coach too, that you're taking your academics seriously. Because again, student athletes, you got two kinds of student athletes. You've got the ones that only care about the sports, maybe slack off in the classroom, and that's hard for us as coaches because we got to keep you eligible. But you got the other student athletes that really care about their grades. Those are the kids we love, because those are the kids that, you know what, I don't have to manage them in the classroom. I just got to manage them on the court. So again, these questions tell college coaches how serious you are, but then help you understand, does the coach care about academics? Does the coach care about my academics as much as I do? Another good question, asking the college coach, how many of your athletes graduate? So here's the deal with this question. There's no wrong answer necessarily, unless it's a really low percentage, like 10%. Then that's probably bad. But the most important thing is the college coach knows or has a good ballpark of how many student athletes graduates. Again, this is a 40-year decision, guys. You need to make sure that these college coaches have your best interest at heart and ultimately want to see you get a degree. You're there to compete, but you're also there to get a degree. So this helps you guys learn a little bit more, because most admissions and on their websites will show you overall the student population of how many graduate, how many go on to get a job after college. This is more for athletes. This is more for that college coach and their particular program. How much pride do they have in helping student athletes go on to the next level once their college degree is over? So again, there's really no bad answer here. The only red flag is a coach that doesn't know or doesn't care. Those can be two big red flags for you guys. Now, who are the leaders on your team and what defines them as a leader? So this is a great question for student athletes to ask college coaches. And I'll preface all these questions, guys, too, that these should come from the student athletes. So parents, you guys are going to be on phone calls sometimes, hopefully in the background. I know for me, when my kids start having phone calls with college coaches, they're going to have to duct tape me and put me in a closet. Like I'm going to be with a whiteboard writing down questions. It's going to be bad for my kid. I feel terrible for them. So they're going to have to lock me up. But the reality is most parents are listening in on conversations. Now, let the student athletes be completely in charge of the conversation, though. All right, college coaches need to develop relationships with your kids, for those parents that are on here, as opposed to for the student athletes, or as opposed to the parents. So parents, if we need you, we're going to call on you, I promise. But for the most part, let your kids do the talking. So student athletes, hopefully you guys are the ones tonight that are taking notes on here, because this will be on you to ask these questions to coaches. Now, most of these questions, guys, should be phone calls, should be over Zoom calls, or face-to-face conversations. All right, you can filter in some of these questions over email, but to me, these questions are really designed for over the phone, because you can see a coach's reaction, especially with Zoom and FaceTime, how much that's huge right now. You can see their reaction. You can see if they're bluffing. You can see how confident they are in their answers. So this question, why I love this question, again, it's going to give you insight into what's important to that college coach. So who are the leaders on your team and what defines them as a leader? So for me, I had several leaders, and that was important that I conveyed that to my recruits. All right, I had my stats leaders who led by example. That's how I would call them. They led by example. So I wouldn't necessarily reference their stats, but I would talk about how they got the job done. They were consistent. We might go into specific numbers, but that was one type of leader that I had. My other type of leader that I had was my bench leaders. So my kids on the bench that didn't necessarily get playing time, but they were pushing the starters like crazy. Those were the kids that were cheering. They were great teammates. And those starters knew that if they had a moment that they messed up, that kid on the bench was going to come take their spot and outshine them. So those are my bench leaders. One thing to be prepared for too, college coaches are going to ask you this question as well. How do you define a leader? What's a leader to you? What does that mean to you? Make sure you have a good answer to that. Because again, if you're going to ask them these questions, you better believe they're going to come back and ask you the same ones. And then my last leaders were a little hard to describe, but everybody knows what I'm talking about when I start talking about them. So it's that student athlete, and I want to say kid, guys. So if I say kid, I'm sorry, but it's that student athlete that gets on the court and just something changes. The chemistry changes. There's more energy. There's more pep. Just something magical happens when that student athlete takes the floor, takes the field, takes the pool, whatever sport you guys are in. And you can just feel that team rise up, right? So that was my favorite type of leader. That was a leader that I tried to have on the court at all times. That was a leader that made the most sense for me. It was more important for me than stats. You know, my kills leader for volleyball was not always my MVP, guys. My MVP was usually that kid that took the team on their back and brought them up to a whole new level. So, great question to ask coaches because, again, you'll start to figure out what's important to them, what they value, and really how they lead too. You know, if you've got a coach that their number one leader is all about stats, 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 guess what? That coach is going to be coaching to stats, stats, stats. You've got a coach that is talking about energy, is talking about vocalness, is talking about teamwork, is talking about building each other up. That's how that coach is going to lead your team. So you got to figure out what's important. Are you going to lean more towards the coach that loves stats? And again, there's nothing wrong with that. If you can do well in that environment, then that's something for you to know and for you to recognize. Or are you going to go the other way to more of that energy, passion-driven type coach? So another question for you guys. How did you go about hiring your assistants? What were you looking for and what were the deciding factors? I love this. One thing that college coaches are going to ask you guys is about failure recovery. So college coaches are going to ask you guys as student athletes, hey, what's your biggest mistake? What's your biggest regret? What happens to lead up to that mistake, lead up to that regret? What happened in the middle of it and how did it conclude? How did it resolve, right? I want to see how you recovered and how comfortable you are talking about things. So we want you guys to also feel comfortable talking to college coaches about either good hires or bad hires, mistakes, or really amazing things that happens when they're hiring their assistants. Plus, again, this tells you guys what type of leader that college coach is going to be. So for me, I'll just give you my story. My first year as a head coach, I bombed my first hire. And don't go looking him up. I feel bad even saying this, but I bombed it. He was not ready, and frankly, I'm not sure I was ready to be the best mentor to him either. So it really didn't work out. I thought he's going to bring a lot of energy, a lot of youthfulness, a lot of fun to the court. It just didn't end up happening. So that helped shapes who I would hire after that. You know, I wanted someone that was going to be fun, bring the energy, but then train well. Someone that was going to be highly organized. Someone that my student athletes felt comfortable going to if they didn't feel comfortable going to the big bad wolf head coach. And ultimately wanted it to be someone who I could trust. So having that college coach be able to answer clearly what they're looking for in those assistants, but then also be able to articulate just the importance of tangibles and intangibles that their assistants are going to bring. Again, it just helps you guys get into that college coach's head. It helps you guys get to their psyche a little bit more. What's important to them? How are they going to lead? How are they going to coach? Am I going to be able to go to my assistant with something? Or is the head coach going to be the one that's going to be my primary contact? Is this a university? Is this a college program where it's very unified? Or does it feel very separate? Is it the head coach is clearly here and the assistant's clearly down here? These are important things. Again, there's no right or wrong answer in general. There is a right or wrong answer for you personally. So hopefully you guys are writing these questions down because these are all good ones for you guys to have and put college coaches, I don't want to say on the spot, but a little bit on the spot. So I've got two sets of questions here, and I separated them by asterisks on purpose. So your first set of questions is more early on in your recruiting process. So when you're just starting to build relationships with coaches, maybe you've only had one or two conversations. So these are good questions for that. The last three questions are going to be when you've had multiple conversations with coaches. Maybe you've had 10 conversations, maybe you're pretty deep in the process at that point if you've had 10 phone conversations. So these questions can help get you guys to be a little bit more serious with the coach. So the first two, how are starting spots earned? Where do you see me fitted into your program? So one of the risky topics that student athletes and families always ask me about is, I want to go somewhere and play, and I want to figure out how I can find out if I'm going to go and start at that school right away. So asking that question right off the bat is bad. Whenever I had a kid, the first conversation we had, one of their first questions was, well, coach, I want to start. So am I going to start for you? That to me is a red flag as a college coach. So it's a much better way to ask the question of how are starting spots earned? Because as a coach, I'm going to tell you, and then you can figure out, do I fit into that mold? So for me, how starting spots are earned is you work hard, you're beating out the person in front of you, you're clearly being a leader, whether it's vocal, whether it's by example, whether it's bringing that energy to the court. And the team is better with you on the court. That's how starting spots are earned. And then you can even go one step further, guys, and say, can a freshman earn a starting spot? And however the coach responds is going to help you guys get a better understanding. Yeah, absolutely. As a freshman, you can for sure earn a starting spot, but you have to do A, B, and C, right? And then you can figure out, all right, my expectations are I've got to do A, B, and C. I'm going to start practicing those things now so that when I get to college and I get on this coach's roster, I know exactly the keys to success to earning a starting spot. And then where do you see me fitting into your program? This helps you guys get a better understanding of how serious that coach is about you. So this isn't necessarily about you trying to figure out the psyche of the coach. This is more of you trying to figure out, should you keep pursuing this program or are you wasting your time? Should you move on to somebody else? Because ultimately, you need to cast a wide net in this recruiting process, guys. That's one thing as a company we'll talk to you about. We'll talk to you about how to cast a wide net, what's important for you guys, and just how to come up with that big list of schools. But eventually, you have to start weeding that list and you have to start narrowing that list down. You don't want to be talking to 50 schools and having 50 conversations weekly with college coaches. That's a lot. So these types of questions can help you guys narrow that list down to more of a solidified target list. Now, later on in your process, you're going to be asking these bottom 3 questions, guys. How many are you recruiting for my position? You got to know. If that coach is recruiting 150 kids for one spot, that's problematic. You got to figure out then, where do I stand on your list? If you're recruiting 150, am I in the top 5? Am I in the top 10 or am I at the bottom? Because if you're at the bottom, guys, you got to move on. You got to find better options, better opportunities, because odds are someone in the top 5 is going to get a scholarship offer. So these questions, again, help you guys figure out the process. And again, these bottom 3 are more for later in your process. You don't want to come out guns blazing when you first talk to a coach, because they'll cross you off their list before you even get on it. All right. And then this last question I really like, what can I do to get higher up on your list? Because that's going to tell you if you have a shot. If you have a shot, then maybe if you are a little bit lower, you can work on those things that coach tells you to get higher up and increase your opportunities for scholarships. But if that coach doesn't say much, doesn't give you a great answer, you're kind of red flagged, your stomach's turning a little bit with how they respond, then that's a pretty good sign, guys, that, again, maybe you should move on. So again, these bottom 3 questions later in the relationship. All right, but you want to figure out where you stand. I'll say this, my buddy of mine is the head coach at a university in Illinois. I won't name the university. It'll be a tell. And she told me that on June 15th, which was a huge date for volleyball for Division I, they called 150 kids. 150 kids. They have 3 spots available. They called 150 kids. So that just tells you guys the magnitude of how much college coaches are casting a wide net, but how much you should cast a wide net too. Because you need to figure out with these questions which coaches make sense for you and which coaches you can cut loose and kind of move on to schools that you're more serious about or college coaches are more serious about you. All right, these next two questions kind of get you back into the psyche a little bit, but also help you understand what you're getting into. So, how would your student athletes describe you? And then would I be able to have the opportunity to sit with them and talk to them on a visit? So, first off, again, you want to understand who that coach is. Do they know and have a good pulse for what their student athletes feel about them? Do they have a good pulse for who they are in the eyes of their kids? Right? So for me, I could tell you, they told me I was tough, but I cared. So on the court, we'd beat them up, not physically, guys. I promise, not physically, but we'd get it. We get after it. Again, our motto was be good at your job and get better every day. So if we weren't getting better, we were doing more drills, more practice, more everything until we did get better. So we beat them up, and I'd hold you accountable. If you weren't holding up your end of the bargain, you got called out. But those student athletes knew at the end of the day that I cared about their well-being. I cared about their academics. I cared about them being good teammates, being good friends, and being good family members. And ultimately, I cared about them. I wanted them to succeed. And if I could get them to succeed on the court, then I knew that they would just go and kick some serious butt in the field afterwards. So in their business field afterwards. So it's important that college coaches have a good understanding. If they kind of talk in circles or ask you to repeat the question or what do you mean by that, they probably aren't as close to their student athletes as maybe their assistant coaches. So that's something to think about, guys. Are you there for the head coach or the assistant coach? Does it bother you if the head coach doesn't know or maybe doesn't care how the student athletes view them? Something to think about, guys. And then this second question, would you have the opportunity to sit with them? You never had to ask me this. So I would proactively bring up to you as a student athlete, you're going to sit with my team without me there, and you can ask them any question you want. They're not going to lie to you. I promise you. I've given them full reign to say whatever they want, however they want. They might make me look terrible one day, depending on how practice went. The next day they might love me. So I always gave my student athletes that I was recruiting the opportunity to sit with the team because I wanted them to just have a better understanding of what that program was built like. So college coaches that hide that, guys, college coaches that don't want you to sit with the team, don't want you to have conversations with the team, that's a red flag, right? That's when you guys maybe should be thinking, why? why don't they want that? And right now it's a little bit tougher, let's be honest, with everything going on with COVID. So this is probably a question that we should have a little bit more understanding when we ask college coaches if we say, and they say, no, that's just not going to be able to happen. It probably can't happen because we don't even know if there's going to be a fall season for colleges right now. A lot of colleges are pushing it to the spring. So you might not have the opportunity. But right now it's all about the willingness of it. Is the coach willing to give you that opportunity? And if he or she is, that's a really good sign, guys. That can really help you. Again, figure out where this team stands and how comfortable that coach is with their team and their student athletes. So I've got some what would you do scenarios. I love these. I'm not going to go through every single one. But you kind of can figure out what's important for you and ask those coaches. So, coach, what would you do if I was injured during my high school season? Would you stop recruiting me? What about if I'm on your college team? Does that mean my scholarship goes away? Do I still have an opportunity to come back and play? What does that look like for you? What would you do? guys, coach, what would you do if someone on your team isn't pulling their own weight? So, what would you do if the team lost a game we should have won? What does that look like for you? What would you do if you noticed my grades were slipping? So having some like what would you do scenarios are important for you. So if you're a student athlete that maybe struggles sometimes in the classroom or maybe struggles with one particular grade, math, not my forte. Don't ask me a math question, guys. But what would you do, coach, if you saw that my math grade was slipping? If that coach can say, well, listen, we're going to get you a tutor, we're going to have extra study table hours, and we're going to make sure when you're on the road that you're setting time aside to actually study that topic. That's a coach that, again, cares and is very organized, is on top of their things. Now, the injury question. This is a big question. If those of you that have been injured already, understand that you need to talk to those coaches. First off, be open about it. There's nothing worse than a college coach finding out through the grapevine that you've had an injury. But figure out where they stand on it. If they'd stop recruiting you, then you probably should move on anyway, right? It might not be a coach you want to go play for. And then if you get injured in college and they rip your scholarship, rip your starting spot, you don't have the opportunity to earn it back, do you want to be a part of that team? Again, those are questions for you to ask, for you to weigh out the answers to. Most important thing, guys, is again, you're asking these questions. So A, you get a better understanding of the college coach and the program and what you're getting into. But B, you're figuring out what makes the most sense for you. And if that coach and that program fit into what you have envisioned for your college career. So this other question, what's your in-season, out of season regimen look like? Do you provide off-season workouts? So this is probably less for Division I. Most Division I programs have a strength and conditioning coach, have a strength and conditioning program, are very, very structured when it comes to in and out of season. It's always good to ask, though, guys. You want to figure out, what does a day in the life of a student athlete look like at your university? That might even be a better question. So what does it look like in season? What does it look like out of season? It just shows you how important that coach values winning. So that's something that is important too, to be honest. I mean, we talked a lot about having a coach that cares about you, having a coach that wants the right fit. But I don't think anyone really wants to go to a school where the coach is like, I'm good with losing. No, I've never met an athlete that's okay with that. So this helps you guys understand how much ownership that college coach takes, and how much they're willing to put in to help their student athletes succeed and win, whether that's on the court or off the court with those off-season workouts. And then these are two great questions, kind of similar to the beginning, with asking what their best season is. But what are you most proud of? And then what have you felt like was your biggest failure? Again, college coaches are going to ask you guys about failure recovery. So you want to make sure you're asking them as well. Figure out where they stand. Are they okay with admitting failure? Are they okay admitting they were wrong? Some college coaches aren't. We're egotistical beasts, guys. We think that we can do anything. But you want to make sure that you can go to a coach that, man, maybe their game plan wasn't that great. There are times where middle of a match, I ripped up our game plan and said, this is terrible. It's not working. It would have worked, but we've got to adjust. We've got to do different things because right now, this is bad. This is not good. So take ownership of that and then make, quick recoveries. But it also helps tell you guys what they are most proud of. Again, that gets you into their psyche. So for me, this is the same scenario for both. What I'm most proud of and what I felt like was my biggest failure was actually the same season. So I'm most proud of my last season college coaching. We had so much bad things happen. So my biggest failure was I didn't do a good enough job recruiting. I didn't have enough people on my roster. I had 16, but at the start of preseason, we were down to 11. We had a last minute transfer, we had last minute injury, actually 2 last minute injuries. We had a kid that didn't show up for preseason, shockingly enough, after a signed NLI. It was just a mess, guys. So for me, I didn't feel like I did enough on the recruiting trail and did enough as a coach to make sure that I was going to have a full roster. We're going to have a great season. But I'm most proud of that season because I had kids playing positions they never played before in their life. And we trained them up and they just excelled. After every match, I had college coaches and our record was terrible. I'm not even going to say it. Every college coach after matches, April, I can't believe your team isn't winning more. April, your team's so athletic. April, how the heck did you guys get this together? April, what are these kids eating daily? Like they are crushing it. So I'm most proud of that season because they all bought in. I had my best hitter had to become our setter. And I went to her and I said, listen, Sam, it's you. You've got to be our setter for the season. We're going to figure out. We're going to make it work. And she was like, whatever you need me to do, coach. And she did it. She set for us. It was her senior year. How terrible. And she crushed it. She had triple doubles every single game. She was phenomenal. But the rest of the team then bought in because she bought in, they bought in. So it was just the coolest thing. So for me, again, that's not going to be every coach's story by any means. I hope it's not. But I was okay saying where I failed because I knew I didn't do my job as a coach to ensure that those things didn't happen, or if they did happen, we'd be okay. I didn't do it. So as much as it was a failure, we turned it into something great. So again, you've got to find coaches that are comfortable talking about their failures and then also comfortable talking about what they are proud of. And then I think this is one of the last questions. Yep, it's one of the last questions I have for you guys. So what are your biggest pet peeves you witness when you're evaluating your recruits live? This is great for a couple reasons. One, you're going to figure out what not to do. And two, you're going to figure out, again, what's important to that coach. So for me, as a college coach, my biggest pet peeves were the student athletes that made their parents do everything. So, coach, I, or mom and dad, I need water. Go get me water. I was like, nope, not recruiting that kid. When the coach, their club coach or their high school coach is in the huddle and that student athlete's not looking at their coach, to me, that's a kid I'm crossing off my list. I'm watching after a match, after a game, after a meet, that student athletes, when they go to their parents, what do? Are they hanging their head? Are they complaining? Are they yelling and screaming? Or are they being positive? Are they trying to find the good? Are they maybe being quiet but standing up straight, head held high? Those are the things that I was witnessing. So for you guys, this is good because you can figure out, okay, am I doing those things or am I not doing those things? So they can help you on the recruiting trail, again, get higher up on college coach lists by avoiding those college coaches' biggest pet peeves. So I've been talking at you guys for about 40 minutes now. So now what? All right. So I want to talk about your recruiting timeline a little bit and where you should be in your recruiting process. So if you're 2021, you're going to be a rising senior. I'm sure high school has gone fast. You should be having communication like crazy. You should be getting offers. You should be having phone calls, texts, Zoom calls, FaceTime, all that good stuff. Direct messages, virtual campus tours, because again, right now, it's kind of hard to get on campus, depending on the state and depending on the division level. If you're at 2022, you guys should be initiating contact, but also college coaches can contact you back as well. So you can have direct communication with all levels. Most sports for Division I, that communication could have started June 15th if you're in that 2022 class. If you're 2023, 2024, So rising sophomore, rising freshman, even rising eighth graders. We might have some rising eighth graders on here. You guys have to initiate contact. So the only way that a college coach is going to know who you are is if you tell them. So why should you start this process now? For most of you that are on this webinar, you have two goals. Your first goal is to get the best education possible. And your second goal is to get the best education possible for the best possible price. So you want to start your recruiting as soon as possible, because ultimately recruiting does take time, guys. This is not a process that within 2 months you have an offer, you're committed to a school. Sometimes that happens. That's not always the case. So because recruiting takes time, regardless of your grad year, you've got to start your process. Why now as well? Guys, all college coaches are doing right now is recruiting. With COVID, it shut down tournaments, it shut down camps, it might even shut down fall seasons for college coaches. That doesn't stop college coaches from recruiting. All they're doing is evaluating student athletes online. So think about it this way. You guys want to have the opportunity to speak with a lot of coaches. You want to have the opportunity to have as many offers as possible. Scholarship offers, position offers. You want to get yourself leverage. And you want to start now so that you have the opportunity to find that right fit school that checks all the boxes for you guys. So those questions that we just spent 45 minutes dissecting, those are pieces of the puzzle, guys. That's not the full puzzle, but that's a piece of the puzzle to help you guys maximize offers, find the right fit schools, and make sure that you've got a lot of coaches that know who you are and excited about you. So one thing that we do at NCSA with our partnership here with NSHSS, which I love this partnership, guys, is we will give you guys a recruiting assessment free. So if you've never sat with us before and you're on that list of sports that we work with, contact me directly. All right, we'll get a recruiting assessment scheduled for you guys. It's 45 minutes. We'll assess where your family's at in the recruiting process. Are those things happening? Talking to coaches, getting emails back and forth, texts back and forth, phone calls back and forth. And if they're not happening, what do we need to do to get them to happen? All right, so this 45-minute call is designed to help you guys figure out your goals, figure out your recruiting process, and get you a game plan put together. There's no cost to the call. There's no cost to your NCSA profile as well, which I highly recommend using, guys. And then if you do need more help, if we all decide that, you know what, like what we're doing and how we're doing it on our own just doesn't make sense, we have premium memberships that are available for you guys to help you out. So if you want to start asking questions, you can go ahead and put those in the chat box, and we'll field those for you guys to make sure that we get those answered for you. We'll take the next 10-15 minutes to do that for you guys. But if you do want a recruiting assessment, you can email me directly. Or if you want more information about NCSA, what have you, email me directly. ahall@ncsasports.org. Subject line, put assessment requests. And then just give me some information about your student athlete. Their full name, their sport, their position, their experience, your city or state. If you play for a club team, awesome. If you just play for high school, that's great too. If you're the student athlete, make sure your parents on the email. To me, I don't want you to sign up for something they don't know what you're signing up for. Their number, their email, as well as some options that work for you guys. Again, this 45 minutes is just to help you guys get a game plan put together. See what makes sense for you. See where you should be in recruiting. So I'm going to start diving into some questions here, guys. But again, if you want some extra help, email me. All right, we'll make sure we help you guys. Okay, first question. What if you have never played an actual high school game but played AAU? How would you go about trying to reach out to colleges? I'm an upcoming senior. So that's okay. A lot of student athletes only play travel or AAU or club, however you want to call it, just depending on your sports. And that's okay. Actually, most college coaches are looking at that experience more than high school. So for you guys, no problem. If you're only doing AAU, That's okay. You still need to market yourself out to college coaches. Make sure you've got a highlight reel. Make sure you're online. Make sure you're emailing college coaches directly. Really important for you guys. And if you need a little bit more guidance on the ins and outs of actual recruiting, guys, again, email me. We'll make sure we take care of you and make sure you're on a good path. All right. I go to a continuation school, and we barely have sports in my school that will affect me if I want to play sports in college. Will that affect me if I want to play sports in college? So as long as you're playing for a travel team, and as long as you set like good expectations for yourself, you're probably not going to Division I school to play a sport if your school doesn't have a lot of sports and you're not on a travel team. So you definitely want to make sure that you've got some experience. And if you need a little bit more help with that, just email me. I can actually go into more details with you. It might be better and easier that way. If you give me some more details offline, and I can tell you if you've got a shot or if you don't. That can help you, obviously, either way. Do you assist with cross-country recruits? Yep, we sure do. So we do track and field and cross-country. Absolutely. How much is a membership to NCSA? So it just depends. It depends on your family situation. Being a part of our partnership here with NSS HSS, we'll give you guys a discount. So that's already baked in to any membership fees. So we've got 3 different levels to choose from, guys. We've got like a basic membership, which is kind of a toolkit. We've got a middle of the road option, which helps maximize your exposure. And we've got really our top of the line hand holding approach membership, which is the highest level you can go to. So the nice thing about these, they're not yearly subscriptions. A lot of recruiting services are yearly subscriptions. We're either a one-time fee, we can break it down into payments for you guys as well. But it all depends on your family situation and when you're starting the recruiting process. If you have more questions or you want to know flat out for you and your family what the price would be, email me. I'll get that over to you guys, no problem. Could you sign up for NCSA even if you have never played a sport? So one thing that we take a lot of pride in at NCSA is putting forth student athletes that do have some experience. So we definitely would want to make sure that you're getting experience first. We can certainly give you advice. If you haven't played a sport just yet, we'll give you advice, how to go about that, how to try out for teams, what teams to look for, what makes sense for you and for your family. Should our parents be there for the assessment request? So the request, just make sure that your parents are on the email. For the actual assessment, they absolutely want to be there. So we want the whole family to get together. It's so rare for you guys to sit down as a family and discuss recruiting, let alone discuss how your day was. So ultimately, we want to make sure that, again, everyone is there, everyone gets the same goal, everyone has the same game plan, so you're all on the same page. All right, how can you get video to send to coaches with no tournaments happening? Great question. So we have been thinking outside of the box like crazy as a company with this. So we've teamed up with college coaches and asked them specifically what they want. And they'll take anything. Guys, they'll take old video that's spliced and put together. They're going to take live streams of your practices. That's something that I know some kids are scared to do because they mess up a lot in practice. Understand coaches get that. We want to see your mistakes and how you recover. We also can help you guys put skills videos together. So we've talked to college coaches again and figured out what exactly they need in a skills video, what makes a good skills video for them, what also makes a bad skills video for them. So there's a lot that we can do to get around those tournaments not happening right now. So great question. Do you train new players that are dedicated to get better by senior year? So NCSA specifically does not train We're just here to help with the recruiting aspects. But we can certainly help you guys if we've got a connection in your area, get hooked up with like a strength coach or someone that's highly recommended, and help you guys just get a better understanding. Again, if we know your area and we know someone in your area, of someone that can help you train to get better. Again, just like me, and I'm a former college coach, we have so many former college coaches that work for NCSA. So we've got all of our connections working 24/7 to help you guys. How exactly do you initiate contact with college coaches? So great question. The first thing that you want to do is build up a profile. So you have to build up an online resume, as I like to call it. So you need to build up that profile first. Then you want to start looking up schools, finding schools that might be a good fit on paper, and emailing those college coaches first. So email them first, and then, guys, these questions that you have are going to be with those phone calls that you're going to have after you start that process of building your online resume and then emailing college coaches. And guys, if you need more help with like the intricacies of the recruiting process, email me. That's the perfect time. And what that assessment does, it helps your family get that game plan put together. So if you're a family that's at square one, you have no idea what you're doing, you're like, April, these questions are great, but you're talking over my head with most of these. I don't even know how to get to the point of having a phone call with a college coach. Email me. We'll make sure that we get you guys set up with steps A, B, C, and D before you start on step E here with phone calls. No worries. This is a great question. If you're coming off a bad season, how should you go about talking to coaches about your prior season times? So it's for swimming and your plans for next year. Be open and honest about it. So again, as coaches, we don't want you to tell us, "Oh, I had the best season ever," and then we look at your times, you're like, "Ooh, no, no, you didn't." Talk it out with that coach. What went wrong? What could you have done better? What's what are you going to make sure that doesn't happen for this upcoming season? Like for me as a coach, being able to admit that you failed, but also having a plan for getting better. Like, coach, I'm going to work harder. I didn't do as much in the pool. I didn't do as many workouts. I wasn't in the weight room enough. I didn't practice enough. I didn't ask my coach for help enough. I'm going to do that this year. Here's how I'm going to do it. To me, that's what's most important. So, great question. Don't be afraid if you've had a bad season, guys. We get that as coaches. We have bad seasons all the time. So it's all about how you recover for it and what your plan is to recover. And again, you being able to articulate that you didn't have the best season up there. And guys, I might not get to all these questions, but I'm certainly going to try. So if I don't get to any questions, guys, please email me your question. I'll get back to you. Usually it takes me 3 to 5 business days. Sometimes it's quicker than that, just depending how flooded my email gets. So again, if I don't get your question, email me ahall@ncsasports.org. You can email me just your question. If you want to sit down with your family and get a game plan put together, email me that you want an assessment. We'll take care of you guys. Should you still reach out to coaches even if your first season was canceled due to COVID? So if you have film and maybe it was your first high school season, I'm not sure, but you've had maybe like club tournaments or you've done rec prior to that, then you can start your recruiting process. It might not be contacting college coaches right away, but it's going to be researching schools. It's going to be building up your profiles, and it's going to be making sure that you're starting to get as much education about recruiting as possible. So when season does happen, you can start talking to college coaches. So it really just depends on your situation. If you played, but it wasn't for your high school, then yeah, you can start your process. If you haven't played and then you didn't play because it was your high school, then you're just going to be in a different stage of recruiting. All right, I'm a swimmer. I'm also looking for a dual degree PA program, which very minimal schools have, correct? As of now, I'm in contact with a handful of D2s and 3s. How do I put together a comprehensive list, get in contact with every school I can with a swim team and this program? So you really want to look up in Google, like which schools have that dual program. And then you can cross-check to see if they've got a swim team on top of that. So it is a lot of work. That's something that part of your NCSA profile that can actually help you with, is making it less work. You can search for your major and find schools that have swimming. So that's the easiest way. And then contact all those schools. So every school that's out there, because again, there are so few, you don't want to limit yourself by having minimal options on the table. Contact them all, see what makes sense for you, and go from there. Do you work with lacrosse players? Yep, absolutely. Men's and women's. Do you assist with studio dancer in high school dance team recruits? We don't, actually, unfortunately. So we haven't branched out into that world yet. However, all of these concepts of recruiting that we've talked about, all of these questions that we've talked about, you can certainly use to help get yourself recruited at the collegiate level. What does an offer look like? What will they say? And do you have to apply to the school differently? So great question, multi-layered, love it. An offer can look like many different things. It just depends on the college coach. It depends on what they have. A lot of colleges, if you're going to compete in college, will offer you prior to your senior year, just so everyone knows. Most college sports will offer you prior to your senior year in high school, just an FYI. So that's why we want you to start your process early as well. So the offer could be several things. It could be, hey, we want you on our team. We'll work out the finances later. We just want to offer you a spot right now. They could offer you a scholarship. Hey, we love you. We're going to offer you a full ride all 4 years. As long as you keep up your end of the bargain, you're going to have a scholarship for 4 years. You know, but nothing can be in writing until your senior year, but you will get verbal offers. Again, most times prior to senior year in high school even happening. And then applying to the school, because you're typically getting the offers before senior year, the kind of nice thing is you're only applying to that one school. So if you're starting the process a little bit later, like let's say you're starting at your senior year, you're probably applying to multiple schools. But most times you're only going to be applying to that one school, and that coach can try and get that application fee waived for you as well. So it's a little bit different process. And again, if you are in that stage of recruiting, awesome. That's great. If you're not, again, we can help you guys. We can make sure you're in a good spot. I've emailed a ton of coaches and only a small percentage replied. How do I get a response from inactive ones? So great question. I think the best way to answer this is you got to figure out if you're contacting the right schools. So are you contacting schools that you can compete for? Are you contacting schools that have your grad year available? Are you contacting schools that need your position or need, you know, your times if you're a track or cross country or swimming student athletes? Yeah, there's so much that goes into it. It's kind of there's a lot of layers to that question. So essentially, you know, if you're not hearing from college coaches and you've been emailing a ton, but you are hearing from some of those schools you might either need to be more persistent with. Maybe you've only sent one email, send more. Sometimes it took me 7 emails from a kid to respond. I realize how bad that sounds. We're busy. If it's a school that you love and that you compete for, and that you know they're recruiting your roster spot, they know you're recruiting your position, don't be afraid to go out and go after it. But again, do you know if they're the right fit? Do you know if you can compete for that program? Do you know if they're looking for your roster spot? Those are important questions to ask yourselves, guys, when you are reaching out to coaches. And that's something that the NCSA can help with. That's why we exist, again, to help you guys find the right fit school. And on that note, guys, I think we're going to wrap up here. So we have a lot of good questions. Again, there's more questions in the chat box. I'd probably be here till midnight if we took them all. So if I didn't get to your question, guys, email me. I will get back to you, I promise. So ahall@ncsasports.org. If it takes me a couple days, I apologize, but I will get back to you. Send me your question. I will answer it the best I possibly can. If you need more help in recruiting, again, email me. Subject line, assessment request. Give me some information about your student athlete, about yourself, if you are the student athletes, and we'll make sure we help you guys get your questions answered, get a game plan put together, and make sure that you end your conversation knowing exactly what to do, how to do it, and you're going to feel better. You're going to feel better about your recruiting process. So thank you so much, everyone. I hope you learned something tonight. Otherwise, I hope my terrible jokes were good entertainment. But thank you again. Have a wonderful evening. I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy, and we can all get through this together, guys. So thanks again so much. Appreciate it.